then, yeah, yeah. So it'll take a minute to come up. I realized when I was doing the speaker thing, I didn't hit the live stream. So, all right, I see Tanya, so I'm going to admit her. So that should be good. And
I look forward to hearing from the Maine County Commissioners Association on your successor. Until then, thanks for participating, and best wishes with your new employment.
Thank you.
Hey Jim, I can say I can update you as well that I've been in contact with the President of the Senate's office, and we have suggested the person that's been hired to replace me would replace me on the commission. So that request is in, and I know they got some background information on her, but as far as I know, nothing's been formalized yet. But that is in the works.
If everybody can also make sure I'm CC'd on the email. I know, Ryan, that you had CC'd me, but I don't have anything from saying that they've asked to appoint someone else. So it makes it nicer because then I have the records and then I can contact people and get them up to speed. I know with Tom, it's probably not such a big deal because they will be I will reach out to Maine Woodlands owners, but like if I don't, you know what I mean? It just, you know.
I'll forward that. I'll forward you that email
that
I got from them when we're finished here.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Tom.
I will too.
Thanks, Ryan.
Anyone else with updates or announcements for this morning? Going once, going twice? Okay, thank you. Status update on legislation. As far as we know, it's on the governor's desk, and when the legislature comes back, governor will be dealing with it. Anything changed since then, Heather?
Nope. I don't think she's going to do anything to January. So I think that's when the legislature is coming back into session, not before. So.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Okay, and reappointment updates we've just gone through pretty much. I haven't heard anything from the Senate president. I've written, you had written.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see where that goes. We had at the last meeting our public access officer election. Heather won, and we had our freedom of access training completion certification. We talked about that. We've all had the opportunity to go take a look at the state's website to do our training and to sign our form and send that off to Heather so that we have something in the record that we've been trained. So are we all set with that, Heather?
No, some of you still need to do it. Do any of you have questions on the links I sent or unable to access it? They said I can host a meeting and we can just read the material all together. So but I feel like people might want to just do that individually and sign the certificate and just send it to me. I have it from some of you, and I know some of you are leaving and I'm waiting for new appointments. So I do understand that. So
if you could resend it to me, I would do it in the meantime.
Okay, thanks, Steve.
I don't, that's one thing I was going to wonder is if there's been any movement at all, looking at, someone that would represent land trusts in the state. I'd made a couple of recommendations, but I don't know if anybody's really seriously looking at that or not.
I think you were, are you the Madam President? I think by the Senate President, is that?
I was appointed by Troy Jackson.
So the Senate President, yeah.
Right.
So I've gotten Dana Hayes, our legislative person, involved. She's reached out several times. Okay. I have contacted them. I've submitted all of your names and your letter and everything else, and I still haven't heard back from them. So I think they're all in recess still. So I have a feeling, maybe January, but I will have Dana reach out. I was just kind of hoping they would do it. I don't want to keep bothering them because I get feedback on the other side and, I'm not supposed to bother them. So I'm like, okay, trying to walk that. No.
But like I mentioned in the letter, there's some well-established land trust in the state of Maine. We're new, we've been since 2019, where we don't even have a paid staff, right? There's some groups like Maine Coast Heritage Land Trust that have lawyers on staff, and they have more land, they've experienced more of these issues than we have. We're more in the ballpark of what Ryan Peltier has represented, and the towns have represented the same issues for us. But anyway, just my thoughts on that. If you
Yep.
need me to do any outreach from my end, I can do it, too.
If you want to call the Senate's office and just say, hey, I think
Or
that
put me,
might get
if
you
you don't
further.
mind, send me an email address.
I'll send you an email. I'll send
Yeah.
you the email of the contacts I have
Yeah,
for
that'd be
the Senate office, and you can
Yeah.
maybe talk
Yeah.
to them directly.
Sounds
And
perfect.
maybe
Thank
that
you.
will speed it along a little bit.
Well,
So,
yeah, just something to happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Heather,
Sorry,
Yes.
Sandy.
I usually try and do this like right off, and I'm not sure if I did it right off. Did I fill out this paperwork for FOIA training?
Honestly, it's been such a hectic couple of weeks for me.
Yeah.
I remember Tanya doing it and Jim, and I remember those two, and I have to go back through my email and see who else has sent me the form. Can I check my records and get back to you? Because I don't want to say yes and then be like, no, you didn't do it. Now you have to do it.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure that I
Okay.
even saw it. So could you just resend
Yeah.
it? I guess
How about this?
somewhere in here, but
Yeah, how about I send out an email at the end of the meeting letting you know who I still don't have, and then you guys can do it with the link. Roberta, did you have a question?
I read through the question and answer part.
Yeah.
Is that all that's required, or is there more to it than that? In one place, it seemed to say that fulfilled it, but
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It's just that as long as you understand it, and then you just fill out the certificate and
Okay.
email it to me, and then I think I sign it, and then I keep it for my records.
Okay.
Yeah, at the end of that process, there's like a self-certification, which is you disclosing that you've completed it and that you're good. We take the FOIA stuff really seriously. We do a lot of training on it. So happy to help if anybody needs help with the process.
Thank you, Tanya.
Well, I've also done similar training for Maine Robotics, so I think that's why I kind of went through it pretty fast. And yeah, I know this stuff.
Heather, John Monk just texted me, said he's in the waiting room also.
I don't know what's going on with the waiting room. Can he try it again? I'm going to send him the direct link too. What is going on? Technical issues are always so much fun.
Excellent issues just before the state shuts down at noontime.
I know. So much fun.
Thank you for all the effort you put into getting it to work.
You're welcome. Okay,
So am I correct that until we're replaced, we can serve even if a term
Yes.
expires, right?
Yes, that is correct.
We should not. No, none of us should step aside until the appointing authority makes their decision, right?
Yes, except for Jim, because I think he's giving back his license at the end of December. Like his license will cease to exist.
Okay.
So then he's no longer a licensed attorney, which
Okay.
I have to go back and look, but I believe in the charter it says that he has to be a licensed attorney, Jim. Is that, or just
That's true. I'll admit my license goes until the end of
Oh,
August.
there we go. He's all set.
Jim? That makes me so happy.
What do you know? An honest attorney. Who knew? Who knew? Gee.
shouldn't have said
Yeah,
that.
that is he
Didn't give the second part of that sentence yet.
There you go. But at any rate, so next steps. I mean, we have a report due February 1st. Heather is bravely going to take a look at that and get a draft report going, because there's not a lot to talk about at this point. We don't have all the draft legislation and all of that sort of thing for this report. And so I'll look at the draft and get that ready, and then we can get that out to everyone so we can review it and hopefully approve it and move forward in January. But are there discussions that we want to start on initiatives, proposals to get that teed up for the next session? I know Roberta's got some ideas, and I want to get to those in a minute. But are there other ideas, other folks who have some big picture ideas or small things that we wanted to look at for the next term?
Chip, don't we still have a list of things from the direction we got that we need to revisit? Am I right about that? There's some items that there weren't unanimous agreements on, so we set them aside, but don't we have to go back to those?
there were some things that we've been asked to take a look at. The definitions, for example, of terms to make sure they're consistent through the statutes or consistent where they need to be, and also to see what we can do to try to reduce confusion and misunderstanding with regard to these terms and these concepts. And so we did have some initiatives that weren't quite ready, didn't quite need acceptance. And we can put that list together and get that out to everyone to take a look at for the next. And I'll go back and get a list of all those things from the last 3 reports and from where we were as to what's out there, and see if any of that is something that we're interested in pursuing. On top of that, though, are there any additional problems that we've seen or things that we've seen that we want to work on?
I don't know if it's on the list, but I think, and Chris may have a comment on this, I don't know, but there's conflicting statutory language about things like ATVs and things like that say, you must have permission of a landowner to operate an ATV in the state of Maine. But the landowner on the road is the person owning the underlying fee. But the towns are giving permission to ride an ATV. And so there's conflicting language. There's 2 places that talks about ATVs and they're in conflict and things like that. Conflicting statutory language we need to address at some point, because it just causes, and I think Chris is finding that, aren't you, Chris? There's some issues like that need to be addressed.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of leaves us in a weird location, I guess, is because, like you said it right, it's like we're getting permissions from other people, like it's very.
The landowner is saying no, the municipality is saying yes.
Yes.
Or, like, can you hunt down, can a landowner post it?
Right.
They own the land, can they post it? Well,
yeah.
No. Some say yes, some say no. I've had people claim they can get permission to trap over the objection of the landowner within the right of way of a discontinued road. Things like that. Or just strange.
Snowmobiles too, because
snowmobiles the same way, right?
Because snowmobiles don't have to have landowner permission in order to go across property, which makes it even more difficult because you have these. We've had them in the past where we have trails that go down these discontinued roads and some landowners don't want them, but some do, and it does make enforcement very difficult when it comes to that because of the conflict.
So there's a bunch of issues around public use and what rights the landowner has that need to be resolved at some point.
I agree. That ATV issue especially is a huge one. Huge issue. And for that matter, Chris, what do you think of the free reign of snow sleds? What do you think about that they're able to do that?
I mean, it's tough. I mean, we've never really had any issues so that's why we put in that law for off-trail riding, because off-trail riding became a big thing. I mean, historically speaking, snowmobiles were you ride trails. That was what you did, like unless you were out looking for sheds, rabbit hunting, or anything like that. So the times have changed with the technology as to what we have for snowmobiles, which has caused a lot of other issues. But with these, and I don't know if John's on yet, but obviously a lot of these are established trails that are on these discontinued roads, so they're maintained by the snowmobile clubs. They're groomed. And Roberta's mentioned it before, but it's these snowmobiles use it, and then it moves into people thinking that they can ride ATVs on it, which Tom brought up the point. ATVs don't have the same access rights as snowmobiles because they have to have landowner permission. But like Tom said, who do you get that landowner permission from? Is it every landowner that's abutting that? Is it the person that owns? Is it small woodland owners who owns it at the end of it that allows access, or a town that owns access in there? That's where we always have issues with who is the one that can give that permission. And I think that's a fair point, Tom, that you brought up. That, I mean, that is a really significant issue that we deal with, and there's no fine answer.
Plus, the new sleds are harder to catch, I imagine, too.
Well, one of the issues that comes up is that it's been said that public easement is like a layer cake. The public owns the easement over the top of it, but the land underneath it belongs to the landowner. And we say, well, if that's true, then if you can use the public easement without touching the dirt or disturbing the dirt underneath, fine. So snowmobiles usually are not a problem. They go over the top of the snow, they don't disturb the dirt. You get into the ATVs, and there are always those few road riders that go out there when the trails are closed because it's mud season and they tear things up. Well, now you've disturbed the dirt underneath the public easement.
True until it's springtime or when the snowmobile season's coming to an end and they're digging up with their skis and everything like that, where the landowners plowed up or they put a load of gravel in. That's where, I mean, it's never ending.
You'd think there'd be compaction issues from sled trails too. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I would think there'd be some soil effects from compaction, but maybe not.
There's a legal answer and there's a practical answer, and I'd like to see them in order to use an abandoned or discontinued road. They have to be public rights, right? I mean, if the road has become a public easement because a public easement has been retained, then the public has a right of access. And arguably that's an ATV or a car or a snowmobile or a bicycle or someone on foot. The problem is when someone calls Chris doesn't know is there a public easement. You just wouldn't know off the top of your head necessarily. So we could say ATVs or you'd have to go, if there's a public easement, you have to go ask the town for permission. Or otherwise, if it's a private road, you ask the landowners for permission, like you would for any other private road. But the problem is going to be that we don't always know whether a road is a public easement. So
well, Jim, I think the other issue is, is a discontinued road designed for motor vehicle and pedestrian traffic, or is it designed for everything that ever gets invented that can go down that road? And that there's a conflict in existing statute even on that matter, because there are restrictions placed by the legislature on new roads being created that can only be used for pedestrian and motor vehicle. And whether the intent was ever to allow everything that you invent, rocket sleds and everything else going down there, to somebody, and if landowners, if the town can give permission for these uses, then the landowner should have no liability for the misuse that occurs or the liability of injury or environmental damage. Who is responsible when that occurs? Right now, the landowner gets held responsible as the landowner when something happens, but they can't control it. And so you have an odd situation where everybody's using these roads, but if environmental violation occurs, the statute flips to, no, now it's the landowner's fault and problem to fix. Those are the issues that we got to grapple with and resolve at some point, because those are the confusing issues, and that's causing a lot of concern.
We did propose the legislation with the limitation of liability, and that's what's on the governor's desk for dealing with in January.
Right. I agree with what Tom is saying. You take roads like ours and the other 7 roads in Fayette that were all discontinued at the same time, 1945. Well, in 1945, we didn't have ATVs. We didn't have 100,000-pound log trucks. That road was never built to sustain that kind of traffic. And yet the Supreme Court said in Town of Fayette versus Manter that the public has an unfettered right of access over these roads. Well, does that mean that everything can use it? Unfettered means no restrictions. And it's been taken to mean that, for example, a logger can use it as a skid road. And we've had loggers that have skidded their logs right straight down the road. And what does that leave for the resident who needs it for residential access?
We're not going to solve these on this call, but those are the issues that I think have to get wrestled with by this commission at some point.
Well, the other curveball that we've encountered up here is like for example, the town line between Frenchville and Fort Kent, the GIS line is off by 800 feet. There's 3 properties in no man's land, and that's like, you know, they don't even like they can't even figure out where they are. A lot of the properties and the roads are not surveyed up here, and that's another big curveball.
Yeah, the town gives permission, but it crosses into the next, then one town gives permission, one doesn't, but where's the town line? Because the towns are supposed to mark the boundary lines under statute, but they don't. So where's the town line?
Exactly.
All right. So that's one issue that we should be grappling with the next commission, and other big picture issues, and then I'll turn over to Roberta because I know that there's some issues she'd like to bring up. Okay, Roberta.
Okay. Well, of course, the one that I keep coming back to is the constitutionality of having a public road with no public maintenance. And I've been trying to get some action on that to say, can we get an opinion of the justices on it? And I always run up against a wall that people say, oh no, that can only be done if it's a solemn occasion. Well, what constitutes a solemn occasion? I know it was done once before when the legislature was considering a bill that would allow towns to maintain private roads. And they declared that to be a solemn occasion, went and asked the Supreme Court about it, and they issued an opinion on it. So what's the track by which that was done? How can we get them to re-examine this issue of whether a public easement with no public maintenance is or is not constitutional? Do we need to propose a bill that is controversial, or what's the pathway for doing that? Because this can't go on. We've got people all over the state who are maintaining a public road at their private expense, and there's just no end to the expenses. So you can't make one-time compensation when you discontinue a road and say that you've made them whole, because then they rebuild the road. Somebody else comes in and tears it up. They rebuild it again. Someone else comes in and tears it up. They rebuild it again. It's never ending. And we're in a situation now on our road where we're not really ready for winter. The equipment that we have is wearing out. It's getting harder to keep maintained. And we're not sure if we can plow this winter. The town did consider using 3105A to provide some maintenance, at least to plow it. Only they didn't follow the law. They didn't bring it before an annual meeting the way they're supposed to by law. They put it up as a referendum question, which was poorly worded, misleading. And the only chance they had to educate people as to what it meant was they had 2 public hearings, which were so poorly publicized that only a dozen people showed up for each of them. And I think that's including the selectmen. So most of the people really didn't know what they were voting for. They thought they were voting to maintain a private road, and you can't do that. That was what that other opinion of the justices said. So somehow that issue needs to be addressed. We've got to figure this out. I get the impression that nobody wants to touch it because they've put it off so long. They keep kicking the can down the road, and it's gotten so big that everybody's afraid to try to solve the problem.
Well, can I chime in on that?
Yep.
That's been the big thing since the first meeting that we had, right, with you and that whole situation. But I can say, living in a small town here that has less people occupying 3 times the space and spreading out, we've had people locally that, you know, buy an Amish building and stick it way out, and then suddenly expect to have the public works plow to their place and sand it and everything else. And the problem is like those public works people, I know because I did wastewater treatment in Frenchville here, and wastewater comes second to plowing because there's significant liability that they have to keep everything open. you've got small public work staffs and they're overstretched as it is. People are buying these properties in the middle of, in the back settlements that are, a lot of times they're just, not open in the winter because they're cheap to buy, and they move in there and they try to homestead, but it's just like, it's beyond the capacity of the local municipalities to be able to do it financially. I mean, everybody would have to pay so much more. You'd have to get more staff, pay more people to do that, and the financial incentives aren't there. That's the bottom line, I think.
So Matt, I see that you have your hand raised. Did you want to add anything? And welcome to the group. This is Matt, and he's representing the Department of Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry.
Yeah, Matt Foster. I'm with the Bureau of Parks and Lands ATV program. Just to kind of mention, Roberta was talking about unfair to private landowners to have to maintain these roads, and other people use them and destroy them. But there's no requirement for a private landowner to maintain the road. That's their choice to maintain those roads and to use those right of ways. They can use their own land to put other access in that other people are not allowed to use. Those are options. So, I guess just hearing that they have to maintain those roads, they don't. They choose to. They've bought those properties that have those right of ways, that have public access easements. I would imagine most people understand that they are purchasing property that have public access right of ways with them. So if there is a problem, and I understand both sides, and I'm a little bit new here. I do have a little bit of background in this, but just a couple of my quick thoughts. They're saying that you have to maintain and other people get to destroy it. That's,
with all due respect, you do not understand the situation. First of all, if we don't maintain it, we lose access. That's been proven over and over again. We had just one of the glaring examples. We had decided to stay off the road during a really bad mud season. We'd gone down and stayed with friends of ours, and we were just coming back and checking on the place. And between when we checked on it on one day and when we checked on it the next day, we'd had a torrential rain, and someone had driven in all the way past our house, found out that the road became impassable where we hadn't maintained it, and turned around and drove out again in the same two ruts. And the ruts that they left kept the water channeled down a quarter of a mile hill instead of letting it drain off to the sides of the road. And the result was that when all that volume of water hit the culvert at the entrance to the road, it blew out the culvert. We couldn't get within half a mile of our house. And we eventually got the funds to replace the culvert. And within 2 more years, it went out again for a similar circumstance. If you do not maintain a road that's being used by the public, then you lose access. As for buying access elsewhere or putting in access elsewhere, we are several properties in. We would have to buy a right of way over these other intervening properties in order to put in a road. And they don't want to sell because they don't want a road across the front of their property. As far as knowing what it is when they bought it, the truth is that a lot of people do not know what they bought. Even with the disclosure laws saying that you have to disclose if the road is not maintained by the public, lots of times they use Section 3121, which claims that if it's a private road, the maintenance is assumed to be shared by the abutters. But that has been applied where it's not a private road, it's a public easement. If it were a private road, we'd have no problem with it. That's what we thought we were buying when we moved here. It said right on the deed that it was a discontinued road. We assumed that meant it was no longer a public road, it was private. And other people who've moved on to the road since then have been told that, oh yeah, it's a public easement. Well, they don't know what public easement means. They think that means it's a public road. They didn't realize that no, the public doesn't maintain it. The public use.
That's one of the things we have made progress in, right? And there's probably more progress to make, especially with the DOT viewer, coordination with Maine Municipal and others to make sure people have access to those important things. That's one of the charges that we had, and that I think we've made good progress on, right?
And as far as Steve, your point that towns can afford to maintain these roads, well, there's kind of two sides to that. One is if the whole town can't afford to maintain the road for the public's use, how do you suppose the private landowner can afford to maintain the road for the public's use? And we've offered several options on that. One, don't grant building permits to places out on these roads. Which often, towns will grant building permits. Yeah, sure, there's a public easement there, we'll grant you a building permit. And then they wonder why people move in and expect that the public is going to maintain the road.
Maybe that's another thing that we could suggest is when somebody asks for a building permit, you stipulate in there, this does not say we're gonna provide any services to this structure. Just something up front, might be easy to do, I don't know.
And we've also suggested, various ways of making it be a private easement in common so that you're not maintaining it as a public road. If we were maintaining this as a private road, we'd have no problem with that. It's the fact that the public can use it any way they want that we have a problem with. And taxation is another matter. If you would compensate the people by giving them some kind of a discount on their taxes for the maintenance they've put into the road, or reduce the property value, tax it as if it's a undeveloped woodlot instead of taxing it as residential. Because what really rubs the wrong way is when you're paying taxes at the same rate as people out on publicly maintained roads, and then you're having to pay again to maintain the road so that the rest of the public can use it for free.
Your valuation may be lower though.
No.
No.
We've been told that, yes, there is an exemption if you're on a discontinued road, and yet we don't get an exemption for being on a discontinued road. And various people we've talked to have said, no, they get taxed the same rate as anybody else. So that's a big frustration. We call it mining taxes. You take our tax money and use it everywhere else in town, but we don't get anything for it.
Those specific points you just mentioned seem to be something that you could be pursued right there. If those tax rates in that situation, for example.
What said about constitutionality of doing that?
Here's a suggestion.
Run versus Kent.
Appreciate the comments, and Roberta, if you could put those proposals into writing, 2 pages, 1 or 2 pages, just bullet points, but just those proposals, and it's something that we could take up at the next meeting along with the APB, and I'll put together a list of those initiatives that we started but didn't quite complete. And I'd remind everyone, though, that the policy we've undertaken in order to make sure we can get something to the legislature and pass is that it has to be unanimous. And I don't know that seeking an opinion of the justices for the legislature, who would have to create the solemn occasion on the question of whether the public easement law is constitutional. I don't think that's going to get a consensus, unanimity here. But certainly let's put it on the table, and we can discuss these things, or the next commission can discuss these things. So
I did go through some of the things that I'd mentioned last time. I tried to write up something on it, and unfortunately we've been scrambling to try to get ready for winter and not quite succeeding. But some notes that I did have, there were some small tweaks that I'd suggested to the abandonment statute. One of them being that currently it says that the municipal officers can decide whether or not to retain a public easement. And it should say in there that if they're going to leave anybody landlocked, yes, they do have to keep a public easement. It shouldn't just be an open choice and let them landlock people. And the deadlines for filing appeals, that needs to be adjusted. And the fact that somebody can file an appeal, being told that, yes, the Board of Appeals is a place to file it. And then after they've filed it and the deadline is passed, they're told, oh, we found out our Board of Appeals isn't authorized to hear that matter. And by then they've lost the deadline. the fact that they filed with the Board of Appeals should preserve their filing as being within the deadline, and they should then be able to appeal to the county commissioners. So there's some small improvements that could be made in the abandonment statute. The discontinuance statute, I'd mentioned that putting in the option for having the landowners agree to grant each other a shared private access, putting that into the discontinuance statute made it exceedingly complicated. And I think the answer to that is to split it, go back to the 2015 version of section 3026A, and then have a separate statute for taking care of the public easement. And I think that would simplify things a lot. One other that I really think needs to be looked at is we talked repeatedly about having towns do an inventory of discontinued roads, and there's always a dispute about, oh, but that's going to cost towns money. That's an unfunded mandate. But a number of years ago, MMA did a survey of towns, and one of the questions that they asked them was, has your town done an inventory of its abandoned and discontinued roads? And 40-something% of the towns that responded said they had. Well, how about if we say, if a town has done an inventory, that a copy of an index of that inventory needs to be filed with the registries of deeds. I've got to get in touch with some of the registrars and see what they think of this idea. I know that they are thrilled to have the binder with the county discontinuances indexed. So I would think that it would be helpful for them to also have another binder. It would be just one fat binder that has all the towns in it that have done inventories, and it would just have an index that this is the book and page number on which you can find the discontinuance. No interpretation necessary, no requirement for hiring attorneys or taking it to court to determine ambiguous wording. Just say where the record can be found. And then if somebody's looking for it, it can be found in one central location. I think it would be tremendous for realtors to be able to look that up in one place. So I think that's something that we could look into that doesn't sound to me to be all that difficult.
John, you had your hand raised. Did you want to add anything? You got to unmute yourself. You're still muted.
Sorry about that.
No
I
worries.
liked what Jim was going at, kind of lean into what we're going to be able to get through with the legislative side of it. But I also like the thought of no building permit if we could tie it to new landowners and just throw a date next year, January 1st. And from that point on, if a town issues a building permit to a new landowner and they come back with these type of issues, it's on them. If Roberta wanted to build a new barn, she's an existing landowner, so she shouldn't have to jump through this hurdle. But the towns at some point, I think, like you folks have said, need to accept a little liability of, if you're paying taxes to these people, then they need to provide some services and just be clear about it. But if we set a date, January 1st next year, whatever the date may be, it doesn't matter. But going forward, the only issues we should deal with from this are the ones that we got on the table now that are going to continue to spool till we're done, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
I think one of the other issues, the flip side of people using a road that others are maintaining, we have, because of the uncertainty of the status of some of these roads, we have people blocking a road and basically blocking them, and now denying access to anybody further down. And often the municipality says, well, we don't know the status of this road, so you guys go to court and figure it out, and then we'll know the status of the road. And that's the flip side of everybody using the road. You have people now just deciding to block it. And I think there was even had a person come in with one of the meetings we had, they showed the pictures of the people that had blocked this road. And now it's on the person that trying to get back to their land to determine whether or not there was a town road at one time, but what is the status of it? And the difficulty is often the municipality doesn't know or doesn't want to spend the time to figure it out, and so the landowners are stuck. And that's just another issue that we got to
I
resolve.
remember that. And in the meantime, the blockade stands, right? They don't take.
There's a gate. Isn't there a big iron gate or something on the road? And it's like, then you know, but nobody knows really that it was a town road, but what happened to it? But that it's now it's the fight between two landowners.
Yeah, and a lot of times
public road.
A lot of times they try to involve us, and we're like, it's a civil dispute at that point. And the only way that it is going to get solved is they do have to legally go after each other, which we see all the time is not, they don't want to do that because then they got to spend money. Which, like to Roberta's point, they're spending money on the road one way or another.
It was a town road at one time, so
Right.
Where did it go to it? What is the status of it?
I don't know, Tom. I was just a spitball and kind of thinking too. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but like the open space tax, the open space tax for recreational use and stuff like that. I don't know if there's any way to kind of put that into, like, if you're on a discontinued road that allows recreational use of some sort, if there was some incentive to that. I don't know if there's any thoughts on that.
Yeah, it all comes back to who controls what use on those roads,
Right.
kind of land, right? I mean, that's the big issue is if a landowner allows it, I mean, we have a vast trail network because landowners are allowing these uses. The problem becomes where a landowner doesn't want them or wants to have some control on the land they own.
Right.
On these, and they're finding that they basically don't have any control.
And like you said, I mean, you could have 10 landowners that want it, and then there's one that doesn't, and they block it off, and then you don't have. So but I don't know if there's any incentive that we could, like Roberta was asking about a tax break and stuff like that. It's not going to solve every problem, but maybe it's something to look at.
I do know I used to own land on an old road, and unfortunately that the road, the public easement was discontinued. But I still got taxed by the town. It was a dirt road, but I still got taxed as a house lot on this dirt road that I couldn't drive my pickup truck on. So, it is a little unfair, I think, for some of these folks to be charged a house lot on a road that they really. I don't have any sympathy for people that buy it, try to build a house on a discontinued road that they know is a discontinued road, and they then expect the town to maintain it. That's unreasonable. The problem because, and I think Matt, is a lot of the times nobody knew the status of these roads, and it wasn't clear, and nobody could tell you, and and there was very little use on it, and all of a sudden there's all this use that's occurring on these roads that never happened before, and all of a sudden somebody declares it a public easement, and boom, everybody's using it now. That's what's caused a lot of this problem.
Well, especially if you're paying the same amount of tax as everybody else, but you don't get your road plowed, right? So that's a big one. So that's where I think it would be reasonable that if you're not getting those services, that you should be able to get a tax break, you would think.
But
Matt,
could we get clarification on that though? Because I'm not a tax assessor, but I'd like to hear from an assessor because I've always been under the impression that if a road is discontinued, I don't know anything about the house lot issue that Tom talked about, but if you're on a discontinued road, your frontage is usually not taxed at the same rate as a town way. So I'd like more information on that from an expert in tax assessing.
Matt, did you have something you wanted to add? Your hand was raised.
Yeah, just to Tom about kind of agreeing with him, but the situation of people buying a piece of property and the status was unknown. I mean, that's still on the buyer. That's still, if it's unknown, you should know you're taking a risk when you're purchasing property, and you're not sure of the status of this old road. So, I wouldn't purchase anything. And I just recently purchased a piece of property that had a discontinued road that abuts it, and I don't plan on using it. I understand what's involved with it. And if I didn't understand, then I would probably not have purchased it, or I'd, trying to figure it out. But I don't know, to say that it's unknown, that's should be a huge red flag to a purchaser. And that's why land goes cheaper. And then people buy the cheap land, and then they want us to fix the problems for them.
John, you had your hand raised.
Just wanted to triple onto that about, that's why I think we should enable a date of after this amount date, it's any buyer, any land, any purchase. Because all of these previous ones, we don't have answers to. But if we establish a start date from that point on, it's on the buyer and they're aware of it. Even the checkbox at the town office that says it when they're title or what have you. But
so I need to ask a question then on that. So let's say we do that and there's a checkbox or whatever, and it's all agreed to. And then 4 years down the road, that person follows the statute to appeal the decision of the municipal officers. Are we going to change the law so they lose right to that appeal?
I don't know. I was kind of assuming that you would waive your right to the appeal after the deadline is passed.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, we'd have to change the law so that waiving of appeal is part of the law, because right now, this is what happens. They are told that the road is not maintained or plowed or whatever, and they all agree to it at the time. And then 3 or 4 years later, they change their mind because they realize that it snows more in Maine than it does Pennsylvania or Massachusetts or wherever. And they always change their mind after many years of being there. So, I don't know how you force someone to waive their appeal forever. I think that's what I'm getting.
Would you have to though, Ryan? Like, say if you didn't waive that right, you can, it's not, they shouldn't assume that they're going to win in the appeal, right? Why would they lose? They should be able to appeal it. Things change. There might be two or three other people that decide to do the same thing up there, and then the towns might say, well, it might be worth it. Might be up to the administration at the time. I think if they shouldn't lose that appeal, but up front they would know we're not promising anything, or you're not going to have this service in that area, or don't assume anything from this business building permit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds great.
Roberta, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I think this shows why having an inventory of roads is so important, because then people could actually know when they're buying a piece of property, or at least have a better idea when they're buying a property of what the status of that road is. Another thing that keeps coming to mind is we joke that Maine Roadway's motto is build a better public easement and the world will beat the pathway to your door. And this is what a lot of people don't realize. They understand, yes, this is a discontinued road. I'm going to have to maintain it, but they don't realize that they're going to have to maintain it for the public. And well, the public hasn't been using it, so why would they use it? And, that's not going to be a problem. I'm just going to maintain it for myself. But as soon as you make the road passable, then the public starts using it. And that's where the real second thoughts 4 years later come in, because hey, I didn't know I was going to be maintaining this road for all these people as well. And for example, on our road, we now have 4 other houses on our end of the road. One of the people, they were not told when they bought the property that the road wasn't maintained by the public. And they said if they'd known that, they would never have bought it. But they were led to believe that it looks like a public road, looks like it's maintained. Yeah, it's a gravel road, but it's in good shape. Little did they know it's only in good shape because we've been struggling to keep it that way for us for years. And now we've got a whole bunch of other people depending on it too. But then another of the people that bought on it, we made sure they knew exactly, this is a discontinued road. It is a public easement. It's used by the public. It is not maintained by the public. And his thought at the time was, oh, I'm not going to bother you. You go ahead and you maintain your end of the road. I'm going to use the other end of the road, and that'll be fine. I'm happy with that. And it was only a matter of months before he came to us and said, I'm really surprised how fast that end of the road is deteriorating. Well, yeah, it was deteriorating because he was using it and not maintaining it. And he's used our end of the road ever since. So sometimes people just don't get it, no matter how you try to explain it to them until they've actually experienced it. They don't understand what it's like to try to keep a road in shape when everybody else gets to use it any way they please.
Kathy, you had your hand raised. You're still muted.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay.
So I welcome Matt to this discussion and to this board. And I don't want to gang up on Matt, but the questions that Matt brought up that people should be asking, they should know before they buy. They should know the status. They should know what's happening on their road. Well, those aren't questions that were asked back then. And that is why this commission has been formed, because it's not because of the new people who ask all the right questions. It's about the people that did not ask the questions because they didn't know. And yes, some of it is assumption, just assumed. It looked nice when I bought. We assumed it was going to be taken care of. That is why we're doing what we're doing on this commission, is to streamline not the new people coming in. It's the people that have been there. And I'm going to go back to the safety issue. Is it going to cost the town a little bit of money to do it up front? Yes. But when there's an emergency down there, they have to take out at least 2 or 3 plows in order to get to these people's houses. So there's a cost there. So is there an initial cost to do the road and be able to get through? Or is there a big cost? Because I'm telling you, those I've worked, not worked. I don't work. I have been on the plow trucks several times in my town, and that is a big cost right there when someone gets hurt and they have to go and plow. It is a big cost, and it's not just one truck that's going to do it. It's going to be 2, maybe even 3 trucks. So I'm just saying, we're not doing it for the people now because they're now asking the right questions. We're doing it for the people that didn't think they had to ask these questions. Thank you.
Tom, you had your hand raised.
So I know this doesn't solve all the problems, but I have 3 thoughts. And I'm glad I'm leaving the commission so I can leave you with this stuff. But there's 3 areas that I think could solve a bunch of the problem. Not all of them. There's never going to solve them all. And that's the other thing we ought to recognize. They're just not going to. This has been a problem that was created with good intention, but nobody anticipated that it would go in the directions that these things have gone. So, but there are 3 things that I think would make a difference for a lot of the situations. One is, I think, if it was clear that these roads, which I believe the original intent was, preventing landlocking. So if you made these public easements, make it clear that for motor vehicles and pedestrian traffic, the public has the right to use these roads for motor vehicles and pedestrians. And pedestrian by definition includes bicycles. So that would be one. The second one I would say is there are public easements out there that don't serve really any public purpose. And we ought to find a way for the municipalities to get out of the business of having some of these public easements. They don't need them. The landowners don't need them. They were automatically created, and some of them are just, they don't go anywhere. They serve only the local landowners, and there should be a way to encourage that kind of mutual rights of way. And sometimes the landowner owns both sides, and so they don't even need a public easement. There are easements that could be extinguished and just get out of that business entirely. And then the third thing, I think, where there's a clear public interest and people, living on these roads, the concept of minimally maintained public roads, I think, has merit. That now it's either the statute says it has to be perfectly safe for all kinds of travel or not at all. And I think there's probably room for some of these roads that serve a real purpose, either a public purpose or a lot of homes on it or something, where landowners would still contribute to pay into the tax base, but just some basic maintenance. I think those 3 things would solve a bunch of the problems, not all of them. But if you could focus on those three, I think you could see some progress, but I'll leave it.
Those are great, Tom. The one thing in your first point about motor vehicles, the only one I'd add in there is the question about ATVs in there. Because motor vehicle, that's where the easements vary, right? And what's allowed, some easements allow ATVs, some the motor vehicles exclude ATV, right?
A motor vehicle definition under DOT, and if Peter's on, probably he would know, but I mean, the definition in statute, a motor vehicle is defined in DOT statute, and does not include an ATV. It's a bicycle, pedestrian's bicycle or walking, and a motor vehicle is defined by a motor vehicle that, we drive down the highway. That's a motor vehicle, not
Chris,
a motorized vehicle.
Chris, you have your hand raised. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, the only thing about that is, and Roberta would probably chime in on this, but 99% of the problems that we see are caused by motor vehicles. It's not just the ATVs or the recreational vehicles. So like allowing the motor vehicles is we're still got the problem there. And like to that point, Tom, like sometimes ATVs are motor vehicles, because if they are on a public way, that is considered a motor vehicle, because that's how you get a motor vehicle OUI, is if they're on a public way, they're considered a motor vehicle while they're operating. That's why someone with a suspended driver's license can't drive an ATV on a public way. So it does roll.
And landowners, a lot of landowners along easements might use ATVs in the spring where their pickup trucks get bottomed out. They'd probably do, right? Do you find that as well?
Yeah.
They use it yeah. So,
but to your point, Tom, 29A does define a motor vehicle. It just doesn't include ATVs. There's an exception in there for Title 12.
And again, I understand motor vehicles are part of the problem, but you also have the issue of, damage to a public easement. And I know that's difficult but you do have some ability to regulate the damage that occurs from a motor vehicle. But I think the original purpose of a public easement was to prevent landlocking.
Yeah.
With a motor vehicle. I mean,
Yeah,
essentially with a motor vehicle, right? And I think that still is valid. But we've added all these other things in here. Anyway, those are my thoughts. So the three items, if you could resolve those, I think you would resolve a bunch of the issues that remain.
Kathy, you had your hand raised.
Hand up, and then Matt. Kathy, you have to unmute yourself.
I am on mute. Okay, so motor vehicles has always been a really bad definition for the longest time, and the definition to me is a gray area, because motor vehicles also include motorbikes or what we call dirt bikes, and that is what the public I think uses this definition of motor vehicles to include dirt bikes. And dirt bikes, as much as I think they're probably fun, they do a lot of damage. I mean, I'm not allowed to take my e-bike on some trails because of the damage that my e-bike does. So that being said, motorbikes can do a lot of damage, and that's considered in some of the languages that we've gone through in the last, Tom, I think 10 years. Motor vehicles include dirt bikes and motorbikes.
Matt, did you want to add?
Yeah, so I was just to Tom's 3 points here. The last one with basic maintenance minimally maintained by the municipality. I'll tell you, that's just a bad idea. I worked for a municipality for 15 years, and there's no such thing as minimally or basic, because it will never be good enough for a taxpayer. It will, like the standards, that's going to be really tough if you have something set like that. People buy houses, put them on there, they're paying taxes, they expect certain things, and the expectations are, always more than what they typically should be. So I think that will be a constant fight and a nightmare for municipalities. And that's just coming from 15 years of working for a municipality.
I'll just say ditto. And I think you'd have a hard time not having that be a mandate.
Okay. I think we've probably taken this as far as we're going to talking about the list. I think if those of you who have come up with points or concepts for legislative changes can put them together, that would be very in writing. 3, that would be really helpful. What we could do for our next meeting is 1, take a look at the draft report, and 2, look at the list of topics for the commission to work on over the next year, and that would at least pick a couple that we might want to pursue and see where we want to go with that. Does that sound like a reasonable way to proceed? Okay. I don't think we're going to see a draft report by the end of the year. That would be a lot to ask of Heather. But I think maybe, first week, second week of January, we should have something ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try for first. Let me look at my calendar. The week of January 5. Let's see if maybe we can put a total poll together or something to have a meeting that week. And the idea would be to take a look at that draft report, but also I'd ask that by then you all submit your proposals or initiatives for the commission to look at in the next year. Again, let's keep them brief. I'm sure there'll be lots of discussion, but let's just get a brief proposal that we can all react to. And then see if we can get a list of 2 or 3 that look good that we want to pursue. That make sense? Any other comments for today?
Yeah, Jim, let me mention, I was invited to the Maine Association of Realtors annual conference down in Portland a month or 2 ago. And I was a speaker with another fellow from DOT talking about permits and stuff, but I took the opportunity to talk about map viewer. And one of the first questions I asked the crowd, and there were probably 75 to 100 realtors in the room there, I said, when you guys are going to sell a house for someone, do you have any place that you typically go, or do you know where to go to find out who maintains the road? Interesting silence in the room. None of them knew where to find out if a town or the state or if it's privately maintained. And I kind of expected that to be the answer. So we had prepared the presentation and we spent a good half an hour, 45 minutes demoing Map Viewer. And it was tremendous success because they all come up to me after and it's like, wow, I didn't know this existed. And this is great. And we'll be able to use this now. And so I kind of ended it jokingly by saying, so when I look at any further disclosures in the future under road maintenance, I don't want to see any initials that say like UNK for unknown. And they all laughed about that because now they realize that they'd have a place to go and find this. And interestingly enough, yesterday, I got a follow-up request from the same association to do a Zoom call with them sometime in January or February to spend an hour for more of their membership to do the exact same thing and to demo Map Viewer and show them how you find if roads are maintained by state or town, what's a compact area, and so on. So that's good that they asked. I'm not sure why they came to me or the other fellow at DOT, but they realized that they didn't know a lot of stuff and they wanted some insight here. And so it was very worthwhile time to do that. And Roberta, I might call you up sometime and ask you, what are some key things that we want to get across to them in addition to what I'm already telling them? So I'll give you a call sometime. But it went over very, very well. And the fact that they've asked me again, that tells me that they saw something really valuable there.
That's great. And that's something that should be promoted more and more. I think the MMA would be a great place to get the word out on that route, regularly too. That's great.
I'll think about including it while I'm doing the next update of the roads manual. All right, no, that sounds great, Pete. And I'm glad that Marina made that connection and that the word's starting to get out. So that's wonderful. Anything else for today?
Very quickly, if you, Pete, if you'd like to work with us on that and helping to get the word out on our website or in some of our publications, I'd be happy to work with you about that. I think it is a great resource and more communities need to know about it. I would also just suggest if we're scheduling a meeting for the week of January 7th, that is the week the legislature convenes, and they're trying to get through carryover bills by January 30th, which means it's going to be incredibly busy for 4 weeks. That's the goal. So I would just ask for some pre-planning in terms of availability and then flexibility as the session schedule starts to unroll.
So you'd want it before that date then, ideally, right? Our meeting?
I mean, if you could fit it in around the holidays, I think that's going to be the tricky part. But if you could do it like that Monday, that would be great. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is going to get busy.
Which Monday are you talking about, Tanya?
The week of January 7th. The Monday is the 5th. Wednesday is the 7th, which is the day the legislature comes back.
Okay. If you want to set this for Monday the 5th, I'm good with that.
Maybe we could check everybody right now and see their availability.
Monday the 5th at 10 a.m. We can do that.
I have an 11 o'clock, so if we could do just a little bit earlier, maybe 9:30 instead of 10, that would be fine.
If we're going to do this online, 9 o'clock probably would work for everyone, right? It's not too early.
Yeah.
It's not like 8 o'clock class or something.
Kathy, did you want to say something?
Trying. Okay. So I'm sorry, my phone was ringing, so I lost the date that you guys were talking about.
January 5th. Monday, January 5th at 9 a.m.
Okay. Appreciate that. Okay. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, let's plan on that. And our dance card will be, we'll look at the draft report and we'll look at the list of topics to work on for the next year. And we'll all have our homework to do, get those topics together, get them out to everyone. Why don't you send your list to Heather, and Heather will get that out to all of us. That way there's one central point of contact. We don't have to worry about it. Just Heather has to worry about it. But I know it's in capable hands. So anything else for today?
I'm sorry, one last thing. To Ryan's point earlier about assessing, if any of those proposals contain looking at taxation and assessment, please let me know because I can talk to a string of really great assessors and get some information before we come back to consider those proposals.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. With that, be careful in the snow today. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing you next year.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks all. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Holidays. Thanks.